The plaintiffs in the case before the Supreme Court tomorrow are 4 Republican and 2 unaffiliated voters from Colorado. They are suing to block Donald Trump from the primary ballot in that state. Those voters are not the only Republicans who've weighed in. The long list of amicus briefs includes one filed by 3 former Republican governors: William Weld of Massachusetts, Christine Todd Whitman of New Jersey, and Mark Roscoe of Montana. Roscoe also previously chaired the Republican National Committee. The 3 former governors point out that they all took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. They argue Mr. Trump deserted his sworn duty and engaged in insurrection, elevating his own political interests over the governmental stability secured by the peaceful transition of power, in direct violation of his constitutional oath. Former Montana Governor Mark Roscoe, who's also the former chairman of the RNC, joins me now. It's great to have you on, Governor. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I guess I wonder how you came to be involved with this amicus and why you felt strongly enough that you wanted to put your name on it.
Well, the 3 of us, Christy and Bill Weld and myself, all felt it was important to make note of the fact that it's not a partisan issue. It's a constitutional issue. And we think it's the correct interpretation is the plaintiff's side or the respondent's side of the case. We still feel bound to protect and defend the Constitution. And as a result of that, we felt duty-bound and inclined to make certain that we made that position known so that the people we live with, the people that we served, don't see this as some kind of a partisan effort. It's a constitutional enforcement effort that is distinct and appropriate and right. The only thing that makes this unusual is that we've never had mercifully, we've never had a president that's betrayed the oath of office before. And as a consequence of that, we've probably had great benefit. But at the same time, when it happens, you have to enforce the Constitution as it's written.
You know, you were an office holder, and so you're a politician. You've had to go out and get votes, and you're not from the judiciary branch, right? And I wonder, the arguments that I see people make at just not even a legal level, but at a kind of like instinctual level, small d democratic level, is that there's something that irks them about this at a democratic level, that this takes a choice away from voters. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that there are qualifications to office. Nobody has a right to run for office. We have a right to vote, constitutional right to vote, but we don't have a right to run unless we're qualified. And the qualifications are very plain and simple. They're unmistakably clear here. You have to be 35, you have to be native born, you have to have lived in the United States of America for 14 years, and then the 4th qualification is that you cannot, after having taken an oath, engage in insurrection, incite it, inspire it, encourage it, countenance it. And as a consequence of that, the case is plain. It's unmistakable, and it needs to be, the 14th Amendment needs to be enforced. So there's nothing unfair about that. It's like if somebody was under 35, they would be disqualified. We've had disqualifications throughout our 250-year history, 235-year history of the Republic. In Montana, a few years ago, we had 8 disqualifications, and it's a self-executing requirement. So the chief elections officer is supposed to make the judgment. The burden is on the candidate, not on the state. The burden's on the candidate to prove that they meet the qualifications. Mr. Trump hasn't proved that he's met the qualifications. Therefore, he's ineligible until such time as he does.
There's a broader issue here than just President Trump, and you talked about wanting to make the point this isn't partisan, is that the support for at the time of the insurrection and support since for that course of actions is fairly widespread in the Republican Party, and not just among people in the base, but actual elected members. I thought this is a very striking moment that happened this weekend with the junior senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, who was basically asked the question, if you were Mike Pence on January 6th, if you were the vice president of the United States, what would you have done when Donald Trump tried to basically subvert the constitutional republic? This is what he had to say.
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that we needed to have multiple slates of electors, and I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there. That is the legitimate way to deal with an election that a lot of folks, including me, think had a lot of problems in 2020. I think that's what we should have done.
He's basically saying he would have done the coup. kicked it to the House and, allowed Republican majorities maybe to make Donald Trump president despite losing by 7 million votes. What's your reaction to hearing a sitting U.S. Republican senator say that?
Well, I think it's stunningly uninformed and mistaken, and frankly, it's preposterous. In the first place, the selection of electors is a matter that's within the exclusive province of the individual states. So he's terribly wrong. He doesn't understand the constitutional history nor the requirements of the law or of the Constitution. To suggest that you would do something that would once again incite more chaos and disruption is beyond the pale. And frankly, I think it's a unbelievable demonstration of a lack of information and knowledge about what's appropriate under the Constitution.
All right. Former Republican Governor of Montana, Mark Roscoe, also a signatory to an amicus brief before the court tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.